In today's video, I'll be taking you through Joe Biden's net approval rating in every single state. Now, if you didn't know already, Joe Biden is a historically unpopular president. Right now, his disapproval rating is at a whopping 56.7%, while his approval rating is at just 37.6%. This equates to a negative 19% approval rating. Considering that Biden is already historically one of the most unpopular presidents in modern history, the fact that his approval rating right now is actually at his lowest point ever in his entire presidency is quite concerning. And this is not really much of a surprise. Currently, some of the more recent news coverage of Joe Biden has been less than stellar. For instance, just under a month ago, Joe Biden pardoned his son Hunter on several federal charges, including tax evasion as well as gun-related counts. If convicted, which Hunter was convicted of, he could face up to 25 years in prison on each of those cases, and that really earned Biden a poor reputation. Additionally, Biden ended up commuting over 1,500 prison sentences, including even some death sentences of people convicted of murder and other serious crimes, to lesser sentences including life in prison for those murderers, as well as people who were convicted of drug trafficking related offenses who got really heavy prison sentences. Joe Biden commuted those sentences to just a few years, which really enraged a lot of the public. But how well is Joe Biden doing in each and every individual state? In today's video, we're gonna find out. Let's start off here with the states that approve of Joe Biden by a safe margin. In other words, these states approve of Joe Biden by at least 10%. Funnily enough, these states don't actually exist, except Washington, D.C. That's because Biden's approval rating is so abysmal that there's no actual state that approves of Joe Biden at this moment in time by more than 10%. And now the states that disapprove of Joe Biden by more than 10%. Now, as I've already mentioned previously, Joe Biden's national approval rating right now is negative 19%, and thus a lot of states disapprove of Joe Biden by more than 10. In fact, the majority of the country does. So I'm going to break this down first in the states that disapprove of Biden by at least 20 points. That includes the states of Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, the Dakotas, Montana, Nebraska's at-large vote. I don't really know about the congressional districts, so right now I'm just going to include all 3 congressional districts: Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, and the state of Missouri all disapprove of Joe Biden by at least 20 points, if not more. Now, the states that disapprove of Joe Biden by more than 10%, but not more than 20, are the states including the states of Alaska, Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and the state of Wisconsin. These are all the states that disapprove of Biden by at least 10%, and as well as that the states of Nevada and Arizona. That already brings the Electoral College map to 271 Electoral College votes for disapprove. Now, with all the safe states on both sides filled in, you can just see how disapproved of Joe Biden is, as well as his legacy really is. You can just see how, again, disapproved of Biden really is across the nation. The fact that there's only one state, and it's not even a state, it's Washington, D.C., that approves of Joe Biden by more than 10%, shows again just how unpopular Biden really is. And now we go to the likely approved states. These include very safe Democratic states of the states of California, Hawaii, the state of New York, the state of Massachusetts, and the state of Delaware, which is Joe Biden's home state, and nothing else. Believe it or not, even states like Maryland, states like Vermont, states like Washington, these solidly Democratic states are not actually firmly in Biden's column. In fact, even some of these states are actually considered likely Democratic. For example, California voted for Joe Biden by 30 in the 2020 presidential election, as well as the state of Hawaii voted for Biden by over 20, New York voted for Biden by over 20, Massachusetts voted for Biden by over 30, and yet these are only states that approve of Biden net overall by single digits. Not only that, in the state of Maryland, where Joe Biden won by more than a 2-to-1 margin in 2020, you see that even right now, the state doesn't even approve of Biden by more than 5%. All these results show just how unpopular the Biden administration has become. And now we go to the states that disapprove of Biden by a likely margin. This should come as no surprise, but a lot of states do fall into this category. These include the states of Ohio, Iowa, Michigan, Georgia, the state of New Mexico. I'm looking at the map here, you see the state of New Hampshire, and even the state of Rhode Island. Believe it or not, the state of Rhode Island disapproves of Biden by about a 7% margin. This is really concerning for the Democratic Party because Joe Biden won the state by 20 in 2020, and even Kamala Harris, who did really terribly, won the state by about a 14% margin. The fact that Joe Biden is actually disapproved of in the state does speak volumes as to how unfavorable people perceive his administration. And that's essentially all of the likely states here. And now we're going to the states that are considered mixed, or the states that have a kind of undecided view as to Biden's administration. First off here, we do see the state of Washington, where Joe Biden is overall approved of by less than 1%. That is considered a tilt Democratic margin. Now, the state voted for Biden by 20% and voted for Kamala Harris by a similar margin. So the fact that Biden is only approved here by less than 1% is testimony to how unpopular Biden's administration has become. The next state here would be the state of Oregon, where Biden is actually disapproved of by about 1.7%. Now again, Oregon is a safely Democratic state. Biden won the state by almost 20, and the fact that he's actually disapproved here, just like the state of Rhode Island, is also concerning. We also see the state of Colorado here, where Biden's disapproved of by 4.7%, according to some polling, which again is a relatively concerning sign. It's not as bad as some of the other states here. We're talking about some of the swing states like Pennsylvania disapproving of Biden by 15 points, Wisconsin disapproving of Biden by 15 points, right? Those are even more concerning figures. But the fact is, Colorado, a safely Democratic state, a state that voted for Harris by 11, voted for Biden by almost 14. The fact that this state also disapproves of Biden further kind of testifies to how bad Biden's administration has become according to the American public in terms of their perception of Joe Biden. We go to another example here in the state of Minnesota, where Biden's net approval rating here is about negative 4.5% as well. Again, a pretty horrible result for Joe Biden. Although Minnesota is a more competitive state, and the net result here isn't as bad as some of the other states like, again, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, so on and so forth, this is still a really bad sign for the Democratic Party. We even see in the state of Illinois here that Biden's net approval rating here is only about plus 2%. Now, this is again better than some of the results we've seen in states like Oregon, but this is still a very concerning sign. This is a state that historically has been very Democratic. It voted for the Democrats consistently over the past 30 years or so, and the fact that the state is only a 2% net approval for Biden is again really alarming. The state of Maryland here, again, only a lean Democratic state. This should be one of the most alarming figures for the Democratic Party. The fact is, Joe Biden actually won the state in 2020 by 33%. Kamala Harris did a bit worse, but still won by 29%. The fact that this state is considered competitive, at least according to this map, is really concerning. And that is not yet everything still. We go to a state like New Jersey. This was one of the areas where we did see the kind of Republican trend really manifest. Joe Biden, despite the fact that Biden won the state by 16%, Kamala Harris only won the state by a bit under 6%. Now, this is in part due to Biden's low favorability ratings here as well. This was a state that that is considered disapproved for Joe Biden by roughly, again, a 4 to 5% margin, which is considered leaning towards the Republican Party. Again, I don't know how big of an effect Joe Biden's approval rating had to the final result in the state overall, but it does seem like that there has been some type of correlation. Because Biden is so disapproved of, some Democrats did not vote, while others actually reluctantly voted for the Republican Party, causing Republicans to do quite well in the state of New Jersey, and quite well on this map in particular. Next up, we go to the state of Connecticut, where then again we see that in this hypothetical, the state of Connecticut disapproves of Joe Biden by about 4.2%, which is again a lean characterization. Now, this is again a very concerning figure for the Democratic Party. The fact is, Connecticut is a solidly Democratic state, just like states like New Jersey, Rhode Island, Oregon, as well as Colorado, who in this scenario would vote against Joe Biden. Now again, approval rating doesn't necessarily translate to the election result overall, but this is certainly a concerning sign for the Democratic Party yet again. And we now go to the state of Vermont, where Joe Biden is approved of by about 3%. Now, Vermont voted for Democrats by more than 30% in both 2020 and 2024, so this is again a very concerning sign for the Democratic Party, but again, we're kind of used to it as of right now. Thus, the state of Vermont is considered leaning towards the Democratic Party. Now, to wrap this up here in the state of Maine, we don't have the congressional district results here, but we do know that the state of Maine overall disapproves of Biden by about 3%, which is again a lean characterization across the board. Now, to wrap up this map here, Democrats are at 147 electoral college votes, while Republicans are at 391. If this was to happen, this would be the largest modern day blowout for either party in recent memory. You have to go all the way back to 1988 to see a landslide of this similar magnitude between George H.W. Bush and Michael Dukakis, where Dukakis, of course, had a lot of missteps. Anyhow, you see that this is a very much a landslide scenario. Well, this map isn't all that meaningful because this would involve the Republican Party winning the popular vote by 19%, as disapprove essentially indicates the Republican Party and approve essentially indicates the Democratic Party. This really shows just how unpopular Biden's administration really is. While you listen to a negative 19% number, oftentimes it's hard to visualize exactly what it is. But when you put it down into this map, it's really obvious. Biden's approval rating is really in the gutter right now, and there's no other way to spin it, as you can see on this map. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.